Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
People have waited a long time. Fans, players, coaches. Unbelievable. Let the celebration begin.
We will celebrate a broadcast legend as Sam Rosen brings down the curtain on his Hall of Fame career Thursday when the Rangers host Tampa at Madison Square Garden. Neil, we interviewed Sam Tuesday, and the engaging, energetic gentleman that you see behind the mic is exactly the same person off camera.
It is. He absolutely is, and he always has been, and that's what's so great about him. And you know, his personality is his enthusiasm when he talks to Joe Micheletti at the opening of a Ranger game, when you see him on camera. Is the enthusiasm he has in real life. I mean, he really does. I mean, even on our podcast, he has an enthusiasm to talk about the Rangers, talk about broadcasting, talk about all the many years he's been in it and how wonderful it's been to him, and just a great man.
We're going to have that interview with Sam in just a few moments. But first, 3 things you need to pay attention to, brought to you by UBS Financial Services, Inc. Number 1, the final spot in the Eastern Conference remains up for grabs because when Montreal could not close in on a playoff berth Monday against Chicago, that left an opening for the Columbus Blue Jackets. They go into Philadelphia. A 3-0 victory over the Flyers. Neil, Jet Greaves, in his last 4 games, has stopped 120 of 123 shots. He's got 2 shutouts in there. Adam Fantilli with his 30th goal. So if the Canadiens fail to get a point against Carolina on Wednesday, the Blue Jackets get the final spot with a regulation win over the Islanders Thursday.
Yeah, and so we've got a lot of pressure on the Montreal Canadiens, no pressure on the Carolina Hurricanes. Interesting to see what their lineup ends up being against Montreal. And then Columbus, who needs a lot of help. They need Carolina as their best friend today, but they need help from Carolina. And then they got to beat the Islanders. And, you know, the Islanders are going to be loose. I mean, it's their last game of the season. They're not at home. They're on the road. They're going to be trying. So it's going to be interesting. It could be all over with that Carolina-Montreal game if Montreal can make sure they at least get to overtime.
Put on your history hat for a second with Jet Greaves. I'm not seeing Ken Dryden in 1971, but this run reminds me a little bit about Sean Burke with the Devils in 1988.
Yeah, well, it's you might say the Jet is flying high right now. Because he's done a great job since being brought up from the minors. And, you know, that team is just incredible. The Blue Jackets, the year they've had, the way they've hung in there through all this adversity, through all the injuries they've had, and right down to now. That's why Jet Greaves is up, because of injuries to goaltending. And, Evison has done a great job. Dean Evison is the coach of the Blue Jackets. Don Waddell's come in and done a real good job as the GM and making adjustments they need to make. But credit Boone Jenner and the leadership group of that team that has, you know, just fought their way through this season. And of course, you mentioned Adam Fantilli with his 30th goal. Could end up being the best player out of that draft, dare I say. He has just been fantastic for the Blue Jackets.
Nothing against the Canadiens, but to see the Blue Jackets have an opportunity to go for this thing on Thursday evening would really be something.
Oh, it would be great. I mean, I would personally, I'd love to see it because of all the tragedy that they faced last off season, and then, the trials and tribulations of this year. But we'll see. I mean, Montreal is a great story too, Vic, because they haven't been in the playoffs for so long and they fought hard, and Marty St. Louis has done a good job with no experience at all when he took this job as a head coach. And they've seemed to have turned a corner. Now they've got this player, Ivan Demidov, that they're going crazy about in Quebec, and we'll see. So they're also a real good story. But it's the Johnny Gaudreau piece to the Blue Jackets story, and the tragedy of that, and the way that season started, and Sean Monahan coming over and signing with the Blue Jackets to play with his best buddy Johnny, who played with him in Calgary. All those things. Johnny's wife, who was pregnant at the time of his demise, his brother Matthew, who was also killed tragically with him, his wife pregnant. The fact that Johnny and Matthew's sister was getting married a day later and had to obviously call off the wedding. All of this tragedy, horrible stuff. And the Blue Jackets have taken it under their own and spun everything into a positive to try to fight through this season. It's been remarkable.
Looking forward to the two games coming up tonight in Montreal, and if necessary, for a possible clincher for Columbus on Thursday. Number 2, the Minnesota Wild and the St. Louis Blues capture the wild card spots in the West. Minnesota gets the first wild card with a dramatic comeback win over Anaheim. Joel Eriksson Ek ties the game with 21 seconds left in regulation. Matt Boldy with the winner in overtime. And the Blues get the second wild card. They whip up on the Utah Hockey Club 6-1. So with those wins, the Calgary Flames are eliminated. But before we let the Flames go, you really got to pump their tires, and the job Adam Huska has done with that club, because even though they were eliminated before their third period started against Vegas, they managed to come back from a 3-1 deficit and win 5-4 in a shootout.
Yeah, and I was surprised, Vic, that they were behind 3-1 going into the third period when I tuned in on my way home, because Eichel wasn't playing, and several other good players for Vegas didn't make the trip to Alberta. And so I thought, well, the Flames they'll get this one. And when I saw they were behind 3-1, I thought, oh my God, how frustrating is this for their fans to be sitting there for this? So good on them to come back, tie it up 3-3, go ahead 4-3. They had the game, and then quickly the Golden Knights tied it back up again. And as you said, it went into overtime and then a shootout. But they ended up getting the win in front of their home fans, and so that was nice.
For the Flames and the Ducks, I think two teams that we didn't have high regard for at the start of the season. They certainly leave 2024-25 with a lot of reason for optimism in the seasons coming ahead.
Yeah, the Ducks aren't waddling out of this season with their tail between their legs like they have in past seasons. And the Flames didn't just burn out by the end of the year. They finished in good shape. I mean, we talked to Don Maloney early in the season, the president of the hockey club, that they would be in a total rebuild. And through a lot of great play from a number of different guys on that team, they were able to elevate themselves into a real close playoff contender. And there is optimism for Calgary going forward. And the Ducks, I mean, no one gave them any hope. We thought for sure they would be down with the Sharks and the Blackhawks as usual, but they elevated themselves out of that bottom feeder group into the, group that's trying to get into the playoffs. And that's those three categories we've talked about all year. The category of teams that are definitely playoff teams, we just don't know where. The category of teams that are going to fight it out for the wild card spots. and then the category of teams in the conference that are the bottom feeders that are in total rebuilds. And we put Anaheim in there, and we should. But they proved by the end of the year that they belong in that category of trying to fight it out for the wild card spot. And I think that's what they'll do next year.
No longer playing second fiddle to anybody, the Toronto Maple Leafs take the Atlantic with a 4-0 win in Buffalo. Mitch Marner reaches 100 points for the first time. He'd been knocking at the door, had a few 90-point-plus seasons in his career leading up to last night. Auston Matthews gets his 400th. Anthony Stolarz, 35 saves. And this is exactly the kind of blueprint that Craig Berube is looking for now that the playoffs are upon us.
Yeah, which is a whole new season. But you know what? The Maple Leafs, Craig Berube, the general manager, Brad Treliving, and the president, Brendan Shanahan, have to be very proud of the regular season that they've had, and that they get to hang up a banner next year that say that they are the Atlantic Division champs. But as you know, Toronto, Ontario will only be looking at what they do in the playoffs. And so let's hope for their sake that they win a couple of rounds.
7 of the 8 matchups are now set. The Maple Leafs will take on Ottawa. Tampa Bay, by virtue of the Maple Leafs win, gets Florida, Carolina, and New Jersey, which has been in place for a while. In the West, the St. Louis Blues will take on Winnipeg. The Vegas Golden Knights get Minnesota. Dallas will play Colorado, and Edmonton and Los Angeles. So a lot of intrigue here, with one series still remaining to be called, because Washington will play either Columbus or Montreal.
Yeah, so they've got to wait and see who they're going to play. But we can sit back now and watch these last 2 nights of games and no stress. Just sit back and relax.
These have been 3 things you need to pay attention to, brought to you by UBS Financial Services, Inc. And now, our discussion with Sam Rosen.
Well, it's certainly a pleasure and honor, actually, to bring in an old friend that I've known for so many years. And I mean, this podcast could last hours and hours because we go so far back. Sam Rosen, the voice of the New York Rangers, and more than that, my friend from around 1980, I think it was, Sam, that we met.
When we flew together and rode trains together and told stories about your scouting for Al Arbor and me trying to become a professional broadcaster and big time in New York. So, we go back a long way, Neil. It's been great.
It sure has. From the OIHL days, which I think I've told Vic about, the first rotisserie hockey league that anybody's heard of. They were actually going to do
all the fantasy games, right?
We did. We had our own fantasies before anybody else did. No, it was a lot of fun, though. I don't know if you remember. We had a lot of fun with that silly thing. And Mike. First thing, Sam, that I wanted to talk to you about. So I spent 11 years at the Garden. You well remember. I got there at 35 years old. And I got to say that from the first day I got to the Garden until the very last day, you're always sort of on edge a little bit because of the fact that it is New York. It is Madison Square Garden. The Rangers have been known to make a lot of changes over the years. And you sort of were like, at least for me, it was, how long can I go? How long will I go? How long will this last? Because it's not going to last forever, right? There is going to be another GM after Neil Smith. And I just, this intrigues me, and this is why I want to ask you this. You got there and in the 80s, I think it was 1989 or 1985.
84-85 season was my first full time on Rangers TV. But prior to that, I had spent years as a backup guy on radio and on TV. So I had really, you can go back to when I was a kid running to the old Madison Square Garden to see the Rangers and Knicks play, and right through the current building that's there on 33rd Street. But no, it's quite a history.
That's what I wanted to get to right away is, I mean, it's a phenomenal run you've had of 40 years at Madison Square Garden as the voice of the Rangers, but people may not understand that you work for Madison Square Garden when you're in that job. You're on MSG Network, you're an MSG Network employee, and you're under the same umbrella as all the rest of us are. And that there's a lot of changes that go on way above our heads and all over the place. So my question is,
remember all the different owners, Neil? There was Paramount, there was ITT, different owners came in. I remember one year, and this is Madison Square Garden. Remember one year, salaries were frozen. I went in to sign a new contract. They said, we can't do it. All salaries were frozen. I think it was the year ITT took over, and everybody's salary was frozen, and nobody got a raise until ITT sold, and we moved on to new ownership.
Yeah, well, even when I was there, Sam, I think I went through 4 different ownership groups when I was doing it in 11 years. But the question I want to ask you to relate to you with me is, I know you never expect to stay 40 years in a place, but like it's just incredible that you're in a lion's den like Madison Square Garden. You're the voice of the Rangers. You got so many people picking on you for so many different reasons, absurd reasons, reasons, all above you. Things are swirling. Did you ever think, oh my God, I've been here 5 years now, 6 years now, 10 years, 15, 20, like, am I going to be able to keep going? Are they going to let me do next season again? Was it ever a thing like that, Sam, or did you just assume that it was okay?
I'll relate a couple of stories, Neil, but I never thought of it that way. I loved what I was doing so much that I always believed that wherever I was, and I started out, when ESPN first went on the air in September of 1979, I did one of their first college football games and did the early different sports that they were programming. And I did the first hockey. They signed 2 contracts, 10-game contracts, one with the Hartford Whalers and the other with the Washington Capitals. And I had the joy of doing them. They were at the bottom of the league, but I got to do those games. And I think we rode some of those train rides down to D.C. to see the Caps play, and you were scouting. But I never thought of it that way, Neil, because I loved what I was doing so much that I always felt wherever I went, something good would happen. And as it happened, when I got out of school and got my first job up in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and I was still working as a statistician for the New York Knicks radio network. Jim Gordon was doing the play-by-play. They had 25 to 35 small radio stations in the Northeast. Jim Gordon did the play-by-play, and he called me to do his statistics. And at halftime, at the end of the game, he would give me the microphone and say, here, you do the stats. So I got to know the people very well at Madison Square Garden then. Then I got entree in 1977, February of 1977. Jim Gordon was supposed to fill in for Marv Albert on a Knicks-Nets basketball game on radio. Jim got sick. They asked Jim, is there anyone you could recommend? He recommended me, and I'm still there. And the first time I was there, I did basketball games. The next season they came and they said, can you do hockey? And I said, sure, I can do hockey. And I gave them all these tapes that I had put together while I was covering the teams for the now defunct United Press International audio network. And I would go off in a corner of the press box and do a period of play-by-play. And when I handed them the tapes, they liked it, and I became the hockey fill-in for Marv Albert on radio. And that continued. I filled in for Jim Gordon in the 78-79 season. He had back issues, was in the hospital for a month, and I worked MSG TV replacing him. So that was the build-up to knowing and learning the people at the Garden, learning the nuances of the Garden, and it really helped in the long run. In 1982, Joe Cohen was running Madison Square Garden, and he hired me to my first contract, and that was a 3-year deal. And I would say most of my contracts to this date have been 3-year deals, with the exception of that 1 year of frozen, no salary increase, no long-term contracts. But you go through different people. But I would go back, Neil, and say that the love I had for the job always came through. And fortunately, when there were turnover in people running the network and people running the Garden, they found the same way, and they appreciated that. And the people I worked with, Phil Esposito for 2 years, he becomes the GM of the Rangers. That's another force in the right place for me. John Davidson comes in, and we were friends before. We click as a broadcast team, and that lasts 20 years. John leaves. Joe Micheletti, who had been doing Islanders, slides in to the seat, and we've been together 19 years. The one nervous moment I had, I go back to the mid-'80s, I think it was around 1987, the person running the Garden was Alan Fields. And I don't know if you knew him, Neil, but a big, burly man, strong. He used to play basketball on the Garden floor the morning of Knicks games. So he was running the Garden, and people were intimidated by him. Strong, tough-looking, aggressive leader of the Garden. Well, we're doing a game, and Tom Watt was the coach. I think it was either Vancouver or Winnipeg. I'd have to double check that. But Tom Watt's coaching. And as you know, Neil, you know him, a mild-mannered person, a great guy to talk to. He wouldn't hurt a fly. Well, the Rangers are winning the game, or maybe a close game anyway. We're in the third period, and suddenly a guy walks down the steps behind the visitors' bench, and he dumps a beer on top of Tom Watt's head. Well, I lost it. I'm yelling. I'm saying, how can they do this? How can they allow someone to come down there and do that to Tom Watt? And I said, they ought to think about stopping to sell beer. So the next day, my phone rings, and it's Alan Fields' office. His secretary says, Mr. Fields would like to see you in his office at 1:00. I drive into the Garden. I walk in. There are several people there. I sit down quietly. He gets up from behind his desk here, and he walks towards me, and he looks at me, and he says, Sam, we make a lot of money selling beer. And he said, please be careful what you say. And I thanked him very much, and I left timidly, but I still had my job. Wouldn't you know that the next season, they stopped selling beer in third period. At the end of the second period and the end of the intermission, they stopped selling beer. So it had an effect. But that was probably my most nervous moment in the years that I was at the Garden.
Sam, I'm not certain whether I want to go into career stuff or to more alcohol, because certainly on your tour around the league, you have gotten some marvelous gifts. And on every telecast we see now, you may have one of the most treasured wine collections in the world.
It's unbelievable. I will say it started with the Devils training staff gave me a lovely bottle of wine. They know I like red. I prefer Merlot, but I've gotten Cabernets. the guy that really set it off, I think, was John Cooper, the head coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning. We're down there, and we're at the morning skate, and then John meets with the media, brings in a whole horde of reporters, and before he gets into the questions, he stops and he acknowledges me, acknowledges my career, puts his arm around me, and he hands me this beautiful bottle of Plump Jack Cabernet and gives it to me. And we're walking out. I guess someone said to him that I like Merlot. So, he said, "Do you like Merlot?" I said, "Well, preference, if I had a choice, yes, I like Merlot." I go up to the booth at 5:30 that evening, and on the desk in the booth is a bottle of Plump Jack Merlot with his autograph on it. "Congratulations, Sam, on a great career." And it kind of took off from there. I got bottles in L.A. from the Kings, in Anaheim from the Ducks, in San Jose from the Sharks. And last night, a couple of bottles in Florida. Have to thank them. And there was a fan, man who knows the owner of the Florida Panthers, Vinny Viola. But a fan came in. We know Joe Micheletti knows him in New York. He comes in holding a carrying case with two beautiful bottles of wine, and we take them home. I opened up one on the flight home and shared it with Joe and a couple of other people. It was superb. So there have been really good wines. I've got this huge collection on my counter in the kitchen trying to figure out where I can put them. But I also asked John Cooper if after the game Thursday night, I could bring that Plump Jack Cabernet to the Garden and open it up and share a glass of wine with him. And he said he might come up to the booth and watch the game from the booth and share the wine during the game. So we'll see how that goes.
You're pretty humble when it has come to your reactions of not only the fans in New York, of course, but you have received this all around the NHL. Could you have ever expected the send-off that you have gotten from 32 teams around the National Hockey League?
Vic, it was interesting when we discussed this being my last year, the people at MSG Networks and myself, and they said, "Look, Sam, we talked about the timing and how, what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do it. And they felt that it would be good because they felt I'd be well received around the league. I didn't know what to expect. It's been overwhelming, and it's been so heartwarming and gratifying. And, there are times, literally, tears come to my eyes. I've tried to hold it together all season long. But I thought about it one day. We're on the road, and I thought about all the cities that we go to. And I realized that throughout the years, you make friends, you make professional associates, friendships that you can call on anytime in every city, whether it's former players, executives, GMs, whatever it is, they stay with you. And the way they've acknowledged my career has been overwhelming, and I can't thank people enough. The fans have been wonderful in their reception. We were in Salt Lake City. Here's Salt Lake City. I was there once in 2002 for the Winter Olympics, but here we are. It's brand new to the National Hockey League, and the fans in the Delta Center were amazing. I mean, again, up on the video board and the acknowledgement of my career. And then between periods, fans lined up. The visiting broadcast areas down low, right in the middle of the stands. Fans just lined up to say hello, take selfies, and autographs. It was just an amazing reception in a totally new area for the NHL.
Sam, I want to mention one thing in case of listeners and even Vic, I don't know if you remember this, but one of my best memories of doing the broadcasting that I did for that period was I got to do a game with Sam. And do you remember it, Sam? Do you remember where we were?
I don't remember, Neil. Please
but
remind me.
Let me remind you, we did a game in Phoenix, and it was obviously the Coyotes were playing. But
yes.
Okay, and here was the difficulty of doing the game.
Was that for OLN, the OLN network?
It might have been for OLN, or it might have been for I can't remember. It was ESPN or OLN or Versus. But here was the thing that happened, Sam. We get there, and I think I called you or something, and I said, "Have you seen the news?" And I think this is the way it went. And you said no, and I said, "Rick Tockett's in a bunch of trouble with the supposed gambling thing." Now, as it turned out, he was let off of all the different things, and it was all put to bed. But I remember us going to the skate that morning, and Rick Tocchet was on the ice, and it was national news about this gambling thing. So now the producer says, "Neil, you're going to have to talk about this on the game." I'm like, I don't want to talk about this. It's Rick Tocchet. I don't want to talk about it. I don't know if you remember that day in that game. And I think we took the red eye home, Sam, after that game. We didn't stay.
Yes, we did. No, I do remember that. And I know that we knew Rick so well. And to this day, Rick is one of my favorite people. We always see him together. The Canucks gave me a beautiful jersey, and we took pictures, and Rick has done a great job wherever he's been. And yeah, that was a very touchy subject, especially gambling then. Now, gambling is an accepted form of what's ever going on in sports, and a huge money stream, and people just take it as part of the natural course of events. But then it was a very touchy subject, and fortunately, it turned out fine for Rick. Yeah, I do remember that.
And my memory of it is that the authorities were trying to get a state trooper from New Jersey on making book, and somehow Rick Tocchet got pulled into this thing because Rick was, the Philadelphia, Southern Jersey guy. And thankfully he got off of it with no harm, no foul. But I'll never forget heading in there thinking, okay, I got to do color commentary on the game. And now they want me to talk about a guy being charged with running book in the thing. So, and that was Sam and my game together. But I do cherish being able to do a game with you. I want to just bring up another one of our dear friends. He, when I first met this individual, he was wearing a Vancouver Canucks jersey, sitting in the press room at Madison Square Garden with his mom and dad, because his dad had just finished doing radio for the Rangers. And I'm talking about Kenny Albert, a wonderful, sweet guy, and he's going to be your successor. And I'm so happy to know that it's staying, what I would say, in the family, that Kenny gets to succeed you. And I'm just happy. And I wondered what your thoughts are on it.
It's to me, it's like the natural course of events, Neil. Just what you're saying. Kenny Albert grew up with the Rangers. He was at the games doing his stats for his dad on the Rangers radio. He's become an exceptional broadcaster, doing it on his own, becoming his own person. He didn't rely on what his dad had done and what his dad had accomplished. He went to the minor leagues in Baltimore, got to know people there. Barry Trotz is still a good friend of his to this day. He's become a national broadcaster. And in a situation like this, we go back to New York and the pressures of New York, Neil, that you alluded to. I think if a person from outside the Rangers sphere was brought in, it would be very difficult for fans to accept that person right away. there'll be no difficulty with Kenny because everybody knows he's part of the Rangers group, the Rangers family. He's done radio for 25 or plus years. So I think it's an easy transition for him and a natural transition, and fans will just say, yeah, it's Kenny Albert. He's been doing Rangers hockey. He knows the Rangers as well as anybody. So, I think it's an outstanding. I felt all along that would be the choice as long as they could work out with Kenny's very busy schedule. And obviously they did. And I think it'll just be a smooth go on. He'll be working with Joe Micheletti. He and Joe know each other for years and years. They've worked together. It'll be an easy transition. And I'm happy for Kenny, and I'm happy for the network as well.
I remember having season tickets for the Rangers in the late 70s and bringing notes because, like you, Sam, I started out in stats. I did a couple of books with Stan Fischler in the mid-'80s, and I would bring notes down to Marv. And Kenny was there in his Vancouver jersey. And I grew up with Marv, listening to Tim Ryan, Sal Marciano, Jim Gordon, prior to yourself. And now, of course, it's so great that Kenny succeeds you. But 40 years later, is there anything from then that would apply to folks aspiring to be play-by-play announcers going forward? The next generation, so to speak.
What I tell young aspiring broadcasters are a couple of things, Vic. One is don't be afraid to express your love of the game. We're doing games. We're doing hockey games. If you're doing basketball, baseball, football, golf, tennis, whatever you're doing, don't be afraid to express your appreciation of the game. A great play, a great serve in tennis, a great shot in golf, whatever it is. Especially in hockey, our athletes are better than ever. The game is better than ever. And I say this to people as well. If they could just drop me into the broadcast booth, do the game, and then take me out and drop me at home, I'd get another 5 years in easily. The game is so much fun. It's so exhilarating. The athletes are so skilled and talented. So I tell broadcasters, young broadcasters, don't be afraid to show that. The other is be as versatile as you can, because you never know where that job opportunity is going to come. For me, it started with basketball at the Garden. But when I started in the early days of ESPN in 1979, the late Scotty Connell was a big hockey fan, was the executive producer, and he would call me, can you do this? I did women's field hockey. I did Australian rules football, and whatever they threw at me. One day he calls me, he says, is there anything you can't do? And I said, there probably is, but I'll find out how to do it. So I tell young people, be versatile. So if a job opportunity comes, you may love hockey, you may love basketball, but if the job opportunity comes in football or it comes in baseball, grab it, do it great. And then if you want to move over to the sport you really love even more, go to it then. I love baseball, grew up playing baseball, but I love hockey too. I went to games virtually every Sunday, riding the subway in New York to get to Madison Square Garden at 4:30 so we could run up to the balcony for a 7:00 game to get the best seats available in the tight arenas that they had back then, the old Garden. If you sat on the side balcony, you had to get the first 2 rows. Otherwise, you couldn't see the boards on your side. Or you went to the end balcony where you could see the entire ice. But it's the love of the game, and I've always tried to do that in my broadcast. And that is, if the score is 5-1, if someone makes a great play, it's a great play. Don't be afraid to say that. Don't be afraid to get excited by a goal that makes it 5-2, it's okay. It's what we're doing. It's sports, and now it's sports and entertainment because people can't afford some of the ticket prices that are out there. But that's basically what my carryover is to young aspiring broadcasters is you're doing something that you love. Let people know why you love it, what you're seeing that you love about it. It's okay.
I had worked a few projects with Scotty Connell and wanted to ask you if his late son, Bruce, had ever produced any of your games.
Yes. We worked together many, many times. There was another son, Alan, who was a goaltender. So we always had connections with hockey. But yes, Bruce was a really great person and a good person to be around and an excellent producer. And yes, we got to work many games together. It was always fun, again, because there was the knowledge that we all loved what we were going to do, whatever the games, whether it was the old Washington Capitals with Pee Wee Marook. Remember him, Neil? Pee Wee scored goal.
Dennis Marook.
So whatever it was, whoever it was, whatever team, we try to make it the best that we possibly could. And Bruce was a great example of that.
He actually hired me at ESPN in 1987. So miss him dearly. We had a lot of great times as you did, and never a dull moment in the truck either.
Oh, never. No doubt about that. We always used to laugh. He always, we had this running joke that I don't know if ESPN had covered it in the early days, the running of the bulls in Spain. And he'd always get me on the headset and say, "Watch out, the bulls are coming, Sam. Watch out."
Oh, gosh. Sam, I, as I said at the beginning of this, we could go on for hours and hours. I just want to go to two different things. One, I'm selfishly, this is selfish. I came there in 1989.
You're entitled.
You were probably like, what? They're going to hire Neil Smith? Because you've known me for so long. I got there in 89. I brought in Roger Nielsen, and we slowly started to build the Rangers into something it hadn't been before. A lot of it was serendipity because things happen to come together. I've always said that, you got to be good to be lucky, but you got to be lucky to be good. And, it all culminated, of course, and we had some great years in the 90s. And, of course, 1994 comes along and we say no more. But from your vantage point, obviously, I mean, I won't answer this question for you, but I think I know the answer. Out of the 40 years of Rangers hockey, your most memorable must be 94, I would think.
Without question, Neil, because the greatest moment as a broadcaster that anyone could have, I believe this, and I know I've talked with other broadcasters, to do the championship of a team that you grew up with, that I grew up with, following them from the early days when I was 12 or 13, 11 years old, going to the games and all my life rooting for this team and knowing where they had come and the struggles they had had. And to do a Game 7 in your home venue at Madison Square Garden to end this long, long drought of no championships, the greatest moment that I've had as a broadcaster. Now, as a series, I always tell people, I always felt the Rangers-Devils series in the Eastern Conference Final was the best series that I was involved with, that I was privileged to broadcast and to watch. But to win the Stanley Cup at Madison Square Garden, the cup that I believe to this day, and I'll argue with anyone, is the hardest to win, to win 4 7-game series. I mean, it was a magical time. It was a magical moment, typical of sports. There was great ups. There was adversity. You went through it, Neil. You lived it. You know it. And as I always tell everyone, whenever we talk about history, this team has won only one championship in 85 years, Neil, and you and Mike Keenan achieved that as the general manager and the coach. You know, nobody can match that. You'll always have that. That is the shining moment. And to answer your question, as you asked before, it's the greatest season. We had so many great players, Hall of Famers. First, to start the season, guys got traded. Mike Gartner, one of the greatest players to ever play the game, one of the greatest people to ever be in the game, traded away. But Glenn Anderson came, a 6-time Stanley Cup champion, coming 5 times, comes to New York and wins the 6th. And of course, Messier and Leach and Zubov and Lowe and Kovalov, and it just go on and on and on with the great players and the great team that was. It was spectacular to be around. It was being around the Hall of Famers. Mark Messier, one of the greatest players that ever lived and one of the greatest leaders. The kid from Edmonton comes to New York, embraces New York, and becomes one of the greatest athletes to have ever played in New York City. That's a huge accomplishment. I had the honor and the privilege of calling his games. Wayne Gretzky comes later, but that one year, that first year that Wayne was in New York with Mark Messier, it was magical. It was fantastic. So, but going back to 94, nothing better than your team winning a Stanley Cup championship, and we got to go all the way with the Rangers. That was something that as I said on the air, and it's one of my phrases, it will last a lifetime. No matter what happens, that'll be the lifetime moment.
Well, I'm very proud of the fact that not only for the obvious, but the fact that we could make everybody feel part of it, including yourself and JD and Joey Whalen and all the people in the office and on and on and on. And we had some great parties, and we really, I hope, made everybody feel like they were a contributor to that championship and that they were sincerely part of it and can have that for the rest of their life. Which leads me, and we didn't want to do this about the current Rangers, Sam, because there's too much to you to stick you with questions about the current Rangers. But Thursday night,
I tried to get them into the playoffs, Neil. I tried as hard as I could.
Well, sadly, Thursday night against Tampa Bay Lightning is going to be not only the Rangers finale, but your finale at the Garden, which I don't even like to say that, Sam. It makes me sick to say that. It doesn't make me sick to say that it's the Rangers finale, but to say it's your finale. I guess it's hard to go out with no playoffs for you. I'm not talking about the team. I'm talking about you yourself.
Yes, we did have last year. Last year still stays vividly in my mind because even though MSG Network could only do first round games, part of my recent contract deal is that as long as the Rangers went in the playoffs, if Kenny Albert had conflicts with TNT, I got to do the games on radio. So I got to do second and third round games, and that will remain with me because that was a special time. 2 of the last 4 years, the team has gotten to the conference final. It's been good. Not quite good enough, but it's been good, and good players and good people in the room to deal with. I think that's something that I can never say enough about, is these players are so special. They're great to be around. They have great history, great talent, and they're human beings. They're great to sit with in the locker room and talk about family things, talk about trips, talk about things that they like to do. They're great people to be around. So those are the memories I will take with me, Neil. I wish the Rangers could have just reached the level that everyone expected them to reach when the season started. But for various reasons, it faltered. The team could never get on a roll, and so they're out. But for me, it's still a season of enjoyment, and season where I get to see, again, players like Artemi Panarin. I mean, that's a player I'll always think about, of one of the great players that played for the New York Rangers, and lifetime Rangers like Chris Kreider, a player that, I'm watching the kids come in, and this kid Rempe, he's so big. He's almost not even lifelike. He's so big, but he wants to be a player. And I've encouraged him. I see him in the hallway running up and down, warming up before games. And I always encourage him. He came up to me on the plane last night and I said, Matt, you've come a long way in just this first year. Don't stop now. Reach for as high as you can. And these kids have great stories, and they've really enriched my life. And those are the things I will take with me. Players, the Hall of Famers that I've gotten to watch and broadcast, that'll stay with me forever.
You've been celebrated league-wide. You were honored at the Garden March 22nd. You did a game with JD last week for TNT. But Thursday night, it's real. It's last time in, last time out. Can you share with us what you believe your feelings are going to be as you prepare for your final game behind the mic with MSG Networks with the Rangers?
I've tried to focus, Vic, and kind of keep that narrow path just on the games. But the realization, when it's quiet time and I'm sitting around just thinking about things, the realization is that it's the end of an era for me. For all these years, this is what I've done. This is what I've looked forward to. Come September, one of the hard times I think will be September, when everybody's getting ready for training camp, and I don't need to go to training camp. I mean, there's the plus to that is enjoyment of other things. But it's it'll be hard to walk away, but the realization of all that has happened this year has been so positive, and it's a reassurance to me that what I've done and what I've committed my professional life to has been accepted, acknowledged, and received so very well. And that means an awful lot to me, to know that people really appreciate what I've done, what I've tried to do, and what I'll always want to do if I can help anybody. Last night we met Paul Maurice's son, Jake, who is an aspiring broadcaster. He's 25 years old. He's working in the East Coast League. He came up and spent a period with me and Joe and watched his work. And, we wished him well. And the last thing I said to him was, if I can help you in any way, don't hesitate to call. And I mean that to young people that I meet and get to know. I'm there to help anyone who wants to do well in this profession and move ahead. So it's been great. I know it's going to be emotionally difficult. I'll try to keep it together. But it's been a great run, and I'm very proud of all that I've done, and thankful for all the acknowledgments I've received.
Sam, to close out, and when we had Kenny Albert on here a few weeks ago, who's just a wonderful human being and a humble, for the amount of exposure he gets, you'd think that he was still that kid in the Vancouver jersey that I met at the press room. And what makes this business of hockey and the National Hockey League so great is the human beings that are in it. because they're great people. They're great. They're the kind of people you'd be honored just to meet, but to give them as friends, and to be able to call them your friend and be able to see how humble they are, after doing fantastic things. And you're one of those people, Sam, that I really treasure. You as a friend, as a somebody that people should try to, emulate, the way you carry yourself, the good human being that you've been for all these years I've ever known you, which goes beyond the 40 years. That's, I think, what you should be most proud of. And that's what I have so much respect for you and your contribution to the NHL and to the Rangers.
Thank you so much, Neil. Coming from you, it means an awful lot because you've given your life to hockey and the love you have for the game. And that's something that I've tried to share with everyone. It's such a big part of our lives. We dedicate ourselves. Sometimes we sacrifice some personal things. But look, that's what it's all about. You know, you give everything you can, your heart and soul. And I appreciate all that you've done and accomplished. And as I said before, Neil, no one can match what you did in 1994. And for me, it's just a great an appreciation that I got to work at the world's most famous arena and work with one of the great sports franchises in all of sports, the New York Rangers. And it's been a great run, and I'm thankful to everyone who's helped me along the way, and you're part of that, Neil. And Vic, you too, if you were in the booth that night in 1994, good. I'm sorry that you got chased out.
I didn't get chased. I was just pulled off JD, but that was fine because, I was still working as a manager back then for ESPN, but I was doing stats in the booth because it was the one way to be in there. And I think for all of us to be able to share this, live it, and it really does last a lifetime. And no better words were spoken.
Thank you. Thank you, Vic.
Thank you, Sam, for being part of our podcast. I hope we can bring you back on here when we can talk hockey and not just careers. And you'll be free to say what you think because you'll be an independent contractor.
So next year's,
point.
And Neil, you know this because you'll be part of it too. Next year's the 100th anniversary of New York Rangers. And there'll be a lot of events that certainly will remember, and memories go back to the championship years and the great players that have come through, and you'll be part of that, and I know I will, and that'll be fun as well.
Well, I look forward to seeing you then, and thank you for coming on and doing this for us, for me and Vic, and it's a real honor to have you on here, and please stay in touch because I cherish you and Jill and your friendship. It means a lot.
Thank you, Neil. I will. And thanks, Vic. Thanks, guys, for having me on.
Imagine thanking us for having him on. We're the ones that are so thankful that Sam would come on NHL Wraparound. And boy, he's the same guy, Vic, that I've known for decades now, that we started off both trying to make it in our own respective careers, me in the world of hockey and him in the world of broadcasting. But same guy, same great guy, same humble guy. All these accolades that have been thrown at him haven't changed him one bit.
We were so looking forward to doing this discussion, as I mentioned at the head of the show, and he did not disappoint us. His energy is infectious.
It sure is. I mean, he just loves what he does.
Our website is NHLWraparound.com, and remember, on Friday, we will have our playoff preview. While we're on somewhat of a broadcast theme today, the U.S. TV networks, ESPN and TNT, probably feeling a little bit anxious in that up until Calgary getting eliminated on Tuesday and the potential of the Canadiens getting bounced on Thursday, there could have been 6 Canadian teams in the playoffs. And when you partner that with the fact that for the first time ever, all 4 of the original 6 U.S.-based teams, the Rangers, Boston, Detroit, and Chicago, are not getting in, that was going to make for some rough sledding ratings-wise. But one thing I've always said about this is when networks sign a rights deal in any sport, you don't get to pick your dance partner. So what it is what it is. It's going to be great hockey, and some years you get the draws that you want. And, you remember that when the NHL came out of the lockout, the first 2 finals were Edmonton, Carolina, and Ottawa against Anaheim for the NBC group before they got a really good run of Detroit and Pittsburgh and Chicago and the Bruins and those sort of matchups. But going back to my original point, you get what you get.
You get what you get. It's supposed to be an equal league across the board. And, I would imagine, and I don't know this because I've never been in TV for any other sport, but I would imagine that within Major League Baseball and within the NFL and maybe even within the NBA, there are certain matchups that the TV networks don't want to see. I'm sure that they would much rather have the Bulls and the Knicks than the Raptors and a small market team playing. And I'm sure that Green Bay and another small market, maybe the Buffalo Bills, wouldn't be as attractive as having the Giants versus the LA Rams or something like that. So I guess it's the same in all the different leagues. The thing that's more easier to identify is because of the Canada element to this whole thing, because there's only one Canadian team in Major League Baseball. There's only one Canadian team in the NBA, and there's no Canadian teams in the NFL. So, and the NHL has 7 Canadian teams in it. So it can make for some tough ratings if American teams face a Canadian team of very little notoriety.
And you have to remember also that 2 years ago in Major League Baseball, it was Texas and Arizona in the World Series. Now, those aren't small markets, but they do have not quite the cachet of what they got last year. And that was Yankees-Dodgers.
Well, which is probably the best you could get, right? The LA, coast to coast, LA and New York. And even non-baseball fans want to sort of tune in because it's the 2 big cities going at it with each other.
Any way you slice it, though, whatever we get for our Stanley Cup final will be outstanding. And I think we can both agree that there is nothing, no matter which teams are involved, nothing like the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs.
No, it's a great round, and it's a surprising round, and there could be a lot of upsets that could happen, and you get more upsets in the first round than you get in any round, but there's more teams in there, and you've got less preparation than in any other round, right? Because you're coming right out of the regular season, and oops, we forgot that it's going to be like this in the playoffs. It's not going to be like the regular season, and oh God, we're done. Like the great example, Tampa Bay Lightning wins the President's Trophy, swept by John Tortorella and the Columbus Blue Jackets. That was a shocker. And that's a great example of what can happen in the playoffs.
I'm going to fast forward to the future right now. And there was a recent poll of NHL players, and they were asked to look at the PWHL rules to see what they might like to see changed in the NHL. So they were given a bunch of rules to look at. I believe over 500 players were polled. And the one rule that they would like to see taken from the Women's League and applied to the NHL is called the jailbreak goal rule. I keep thinking about the bald guy with the mustache on the Monopoly card and his get out of jail free card. The rule would be that if a team scores a shorthanded goal, the penalty ends the same as if that team had surrendered a power play goal to the opposition, like it or not.
No, I don't like it. I don't think that you should get It's like saying, okay, if you can score shorthanded on these guys, we're going to punish them, take their power play away, and reward you and make you even with the other team. And you know what? You get a penalty, you should have to serve the 2 minutes or until you get scored on.
30% of the players disagreed with you. The other rules.
That's not a lot. 30%. Well, 3 out of 10.
But it's 30% of all of the rules that are here. And we're going to just go through the other 4 quickly. The 3-2-1-0 point system, meaning 3 points for a regulation win, 2 for an overtime or shootout win, 1 for an overtime or shootout loss, and nothing for a regulation loss. 24% were in favor of this rule, like it or not.
No, I don't like it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see 3 point games. You get 3 points if you win. I like it with 2.
You're getting cranky.
No, I just don't like it. But 24.4% of what?
Of those polled, they had one choice to make their selection, and 24% went for this point system. So here's another one for you. Let's talk playoffs. This one has a lot of intrigue attached to it, a lot of locker room billboard material. Top seeds in each conference get to pick their opponent in the first round. Almost 17% were in favor of this one.
I like that. But the league will never go for it because the league doesn't want it. The league doesn't want to put anything in the hands of the teams, and they want it more set for TV and all the rest of it. So, I mean, I don't mind that. Anything that gives a reward to the top team, I'm in favor of, because I don't think. I mean, the system now 1 versus 8. That's really good. It should stay like that, but it should be 2 versus 7, not the other division winner against 7. I'm more a purist in that.
I think if I'm an underdog and somebody is picking me as their opponent, that's all I need for motivation.
Yeah, no, that would be motivating for sure.
Player can be repeated as often as a club would like in a shootout. I mean, we don't like the shootout to begin with, but this would put maybe a little bit different wrinkle because you remember how successful TJ Oshie was, and we don't know if he's even going to come back. But do you like the idea that if the shootout stays in the NHL, that a player can be repeated as often as the head coach would like?
Boy, you're really getting away from a team game there. Like you're going down to some guys would never get a shootout ever in their entire career if you do that, right? Because you at least the way it is now, there's a chance that you're going to get a shootout attempt if it goes far enough because they're going to run out of guys. So this would really make it not a team game. But I understand why you'd get the shootout over with quicker if you could just do the same guy over and over again.
Last one. Removing the trapezoid from behind the net, restricting goaltender movement to play the puck. 13.5%.
Yeah, so when we say that, to understand it properly, that means that the goalie would be able to go into the corners where he's not allowed to go right now. He's always been allowed to go into the trapezoid. So it's removing those corners, do not enter areas, right? That's what this would be. And they put that in there to make sure that the goalie didn't come out and, be able to play the puck every time it went down, and then everybody had to circle back. I don't know. I'd like to see a game now that it's been so long, Vic. I'd like to see a game with them removed and see what difference it makes, how different the game would be.
And this was the Martin Brodeur rule, basically.
Basically, I mean, I was the one that suggested, and they put into action before this, that if a goalie came out of his crease when the puck was shot down for icing, that the icing was nullified by the goaltender coming out of his crease. That was mine. I got to say, to be honest with you, because what I didn't like was the goalie comes out, fakes, and then lets his defenseman touch it, and then it's icing. So this is sort of that, where you can't go into the corner. The Marty Brodeurs of the world today, who's most of the guys, they can't go off into the corner and just throw it back down the ice again. It's got to be a defenseman or a skater that gets the puck. Again, I'd like to see it to see how the game would be different, because it's been, how many years has it been that we've had that now?
Oh, it's got to be 25 years.
Well, didn't they change it in 05 for the 05, 06? Is that when that came in?
Yeah.
Is that when the red line came out and the trapezoid
coming out of the
was
lockout in 05, 06?
Yeah, so 06. So we've had it in there for almost 20 years. So I can't remember what it was like without it, other than, I don't, with all these other rules changed, I don't know what it would be like without it, because it wouldn't be the same as in the days of the red line.
It'll be interesting to see if this is something that is actually put into play during next preseason and perhaps implemented sometime down in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Player notes. Gabriel Landeskog has been recalled from the Colorado Eagles. He had a 2-game conditioning stint down in the AHL, and he may very well be part of the Avalanche plans for the playoffs.
That'd be wonderful. It'd be great to see him back. He's worked so hard to get back into the league, and certainly would increase the odds for the Colorado Avalanche this playoff season.
Nikolai Ehlers, forward for the Winnipeg Jets, now listed as out week to week. He had a collision with a linesman, backed into him on Saturday night in Chicago, apparent foot injury, and this is a significant loss for the Jets as they head into their opening round series with the Blues.
Yeah, it sure is. Ehlers has had a great season. He's a great player for the Jets, and it's hard to imagine what the foot injury is when he ran into the linesman. Did he get cut? Which I don't know how you get cut through those boots they wear now, but he'll be a noticeable loss for the Jets.
Suspension news. Darnell Nurse gets 1 game for his cross-check on Quentin Byfield on Monday, so he will miss the Oilers' regular season finale. And Yakov Trenin, forward for the Minnesota Wild, there had been some talk about whether or not he would receive some supplemental discipline for his sucker punch on Derek Forbort of the Vancouver Canucks on Saturday. Forbort ended up with a broken orbital bone. However, the league says no discipline forthcoming.
And if anybody should know about the unwritten rules of fighting, it would be George Parros, who is the top dog at the player safety committee. So on we go.
A couple of great send-offs. So we kind of held this one from the Minnesota and Anaheim game from Tuesday. After Joel Eriksson had tied the game, and the Wild were assured of making the playoffs. Great move by John Hines. He takes out starting goaltender Philip Gustafson, and he puts in Marc-Andre Fleury for a final regular season game. I mean, Gustafson's going to be the starter for the playoffs, no question. But Fleury gets into the overtime, makes 5 saves, 3 of them during an Anaheim power play. Full acrobatics. They win the game in overtime. It's his 575th career win. And what an amazing send-off. And after the game, the Ducks lined up and they shook Fleury's hand. And it was just a wonderful scene in Minnesota.
Yeah, that's really great. It's Fleury's had a lot of good send-offs this season. And of course, nobody smiles more than Marc-Andre, but it's good. He deserves this. He deserves whatever he gets. He's been a great ambassador for the game.
And a final opportunity to be on a team that makes the Stanley Cup playoffs. Probably a little bit less fanfare around the league, but certainly notable. Robert Bertuzzo, defenseman for the Utah Hockey Club, was saluted by the Blues after their loss in St. Louis on Tuesday. He won the Cup with the Blues in 2019, spent 10 seasons in St. Louis. Now, he was injured, thought to be done for the year. He had not played since the 2nd of January, so he was a surprise inclusion into the lineup on Tuesday, played a little over 12 minutes. His parents flew in for the game. He's just turned 36 years old. He's an unrestricted free agent, but just by the body language and everything suggested last night, this may be his last game in the NHL, and the Blues gave him a warm send-off last night after the game.
Yeah, that's really great of the Blues to do that, and Doug Armstrong and Jim Montgomery, the head coach. Bortuzzo, as you know, played for the Islanders last year. I got to see him play a lot. He was a late signing by Utah, probably with this latest injury that held him out since January. He probably decided, okay, that's it. That's enough. I'm not just going to hang on and, be signed in September every year and go through a lot of injuries. So, but it's class act by the Blues to do that for him. And I'm sure him and his parents were very much honored by that.
We talked about it a week ago, just the subculture that is developed in the NHL of doing things in such a high class manner. It's a wonderful thing to see.
It sure is. It's just great. It's heartwarming that in this time in humanity where all you hear about is people not being nice to one another, that you see stuff like this, which is really classy stuff.
This is the human side of the story. Neil, you've known Sam Rosen since the late 70s, early 80s, and this is a friendship that has just gotten better with time.
I think I first met Sam in the New York Rangers press room when I was doing scouting for the Islanders. So it would have been 1980 when I started that. And everybody was friendly to everybody in there. The stringers, meaning the guys that strung radio information back to the radio stations, the writers, John Gentile, who ran the bar that John Halligan and his wife, and everybody was friends. And Sam was one of the group, and Sam was an aspiring broadcaster. And we were close enough that about 5 or 6 of us, Jay Arbor, Al's son, myself, Rich Torrey, I believe, Bill Torrey's son, certainly Howie Rose, other names that you'd know, started a off-ice hockey league, OIHL. So it was Office Hockey League and Off-Ice Hockey League. And we had a draft in the summer, and you draft players and on goal scoring, just goal scoring. You had to draft X number of forwards and also a few defensemen. And then we had rules on trades and all that kind of stuff. And Sam was in there for years with us, and we had a lot of fun with it. He was just one of the guys. He was just one of us. And then, as we know, he got the job in 1984 to be the full-time broadcaster. And I had already left to go then to Detroit. I was with the Red Wings by then. I hadn't literally left because I still lived in the New York area. But I've always considered Sam like a friend, like not necessarily a broadcaster, although I admire everything about his broadcasting and that. But I just considered him a buddy. Like all of us, we were all trying to hone our craft, whatever area we were in.
And I think one thing that people do not know about Sam is he wasn't even born in the United States.
No, born in Ulm, Germany, ULM, Germany, and born, his name when he was born was Samuel Rosenblum, BLUM at the end of Rosen. And he actually dropped that part of his name just to shorten his name up. And that he said that was at a time when radio guys all did that. They changed their name, they shortened it up. And it's interesting. He was born in Germany, moved to the United States at 2 years old with his parents. And thus here came the 2-year-old broadcaster that we didn't know would be there. He was a great baseball player. When he played, he was captain of his baseball teams in college. So he was a player of note. And he mentioned off camera that, rather than try to be a minor league player and make his way up. They just thought, you know what, it's better to just stay as a college player. And when college is over, baseball's over.
One of the other things that we talked about off camera with Sam was his call at the end of Game 7 in 1994. And there were 2 icings in the final minute, the last one coming with 1.6 seconds left, and whether he had actually thought about what he was going to say when that clock hit 000.
But the thing that's really interesting that I never knew until we talked to him about it was that he said the problem was you're waiting for these 2 icing calls and the puck to be dropped and for them to win it. And so when the buzzer did finally go, he says his first words were, "No more waiting."
Yep, the waiting is over.
The waiting is over. And he really, because of all the waiting to get to the buzzer, and that I found that really interesting. And of course, his call of that lives on in infamy. It was great. It was a great call, and no more curses, because everybody talked for all those years about there was a curse. Was it because they burned their mortgage in the Stanley Cup and all this kind of stuff that went on, and the whole 1940 chant and all the rest of it. So no, Sam's call was great. And the thing that really wowed me was him saying that there can be no greater moment for a broadcaster than to be at Madison Square Garden, the home arena of the team that you've been broadcasting for, in Game 7, and have them win the championship, and you get to call that after all those years. He said there couldn't be a bigger thing to do, and that championship would live on forever as bigger than any that anyone could ever have. So I found that really something, because I see it from my perspective. I don't always get to understand it from other people's perspective.
And that's something that a lot of local broadcasters today will never have that opportunity, except at least on the TV end, because the networks take over after the first round.
Right. And even, and when you think about it, there are hundreds and hundreds of hockey play-by-play men, let alone all the other sports. And some of them never come close to being able to call a championship game, even if there's not major networks coming in, even if they would get to do the game had it gone all the way. They just are never with a team good enough to win a championship. And so they never really get there. And they're dying to get there too, because they want to be part of the championship in the part that they play in the whole production.
Quite a legacy for a legend. And we thank Sam Rosen for joining us for the memorable interview on this show. Thanks to UBS Financial Services, Inc., NHL Wraparound and UBS Financial Services, Inc. are not affiliated. UBS is a sponsor of 3 things you need to pay attention to. No other affiliation, relationship, or endorsement is made, suggested, intended, or should be implied or inferred between UBS and VNS Productions, LLC, or any of the individuals or businesses and or their respective products and services appearing in this program. Thanks to our listeners. Send questions or comments to nhlwraparound@gmail.com. You can also reach us individually at neil@nhlwraparound.com or vic@nhlwraparound.com. We are available on all podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube, and our complete catalog can be found on our website, nhlwraparound.com. So please subscribe, like us, and also check out some of our shorter clips on X at NHL Wraparound. Neil, I look forward to seeing you on Friday for our playoff preview.
For sure. And that's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait.
We just look forward to see who the final party will be in the 16-team tournament. Will it be Columbus or will it be the Montreal Canadiens? We'll see you Friday.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.